respected chair, Professor Huck, a global celebrity indeed. I feel gratified that I met the man I used to read from, Kathmandu, Professor Huck, and all eminent panelists seated on the dais, distinguished writers, translators, critics, thinkers, ladies and gentlemen. Since I started attending to sessions yesterday afternoon, I was really struggling to make sense out of what was being spoken from the dais. Basically owing to my ignorance of Bangla language. And the little that was mentioned in English or Hindi or any other language that I was familiar with, I was trying to add up those small things and trying to make sense of what was going on here on the stage. And this grappling of mine with the language and my comfort with the little English or little Western ideas that was mentioned gave me a sense of how language connects. And in spite of living in a very proximal geographical space, hardly a distance of 500 or 1000 kilometers, how we fail to make connectivity through language, though we make civilizational and cultural connectivity. And that inspired me to think that somewhere perhaps we need, wanted or unwanted, we need English language to make a connection. I am not a sort of Eastern chauvinist to claim we need to work with our local languages. I subscribe to the idea that it is not the language that matters most, it is the idea that matters most. So when it comes to this idea, the global language, English language has always worked. I come from Nepal, and probably I and Professor Bimal are the only two panelists here who are not speaking Bengali language. So I feel gratified that at least this festival is expanded to become inclusive, and we are here from Nepal, India and Bangladesh speaking on issues of collective concern and common concern. And thank you for this inclusion. Secondly, I also write a lot on the issue of diasporization of Nepali population. I belong to that generation of critics who is not at all impressed by the Western idea and conception of diasporization. Second thing is, I come from Nepal, which very miraculously escaped the specter of Western colonization. Even historians in Nepal do not have a clue today why Nepal was never colonized. This is still a researchable issue, but it is a fact that Nepal was never colonized. So the way we look at Bangladeshi diasporas from Bangladesh's position as a post-colonial nation, and the way I look at Nepali diasporas from Nepal as a never colonized nation has some theoretical differences perhaps. To me, as Professor Amyodev was saying, Nepali diaspora does not exist in the West. It exists in countries in Asia and to the east of Nepal. The reason is that in the West, the migration of Nepali population does not have a history of more than 15 to 20 years. And to me, 15 to 20 years is too short a time to claim an exiled population or self-exiled population to be diasporic. Secondly, diaspora is not just a national category, it is also a content. Unless your writings reflect diasporic content, your being diaspora does not make much sense when it comes to literature and criticism. Unless your writing reflects the content of being diasporic, your diasporic musings, those things like hybridization, those things like mimicry that theorists have talked about, your being diaspora does not guarantee your writing is diasporic. Nepali diasporic population does not exist in the West. Where then is Nepali diaspora population? By saying that, I don't mean there is no Nepali population in the West. There is a huge population of Nepali migrant workers in New York. There is a huge population of Nepali workers in the Middle East. There are Nepali people in Korea. There are Nepali people in Europe and elsewhere. But then that does not constitute a diasporic category when it comes to literature and when it comes to writing. What then are my claims about Nepali diaspora? I will tell you an amazing thing. Very near to Sylhet, where Bangladesh shares border with India, there are northeastern Indian states where a huge population for more than 4 centuries is those of people who migrated from Nepal. You will be amazed. Mandakranta Sen was mentioning Manipur. You will be amazed if you go there. The governmental gazetted names of places belong to Nepali vocabulary. The names are like Kalapahar. The names are like Setikhola. And these words do not exist in Manipuri vernacular. Even in Assam, here are people from Assam, I am aware. There are places whose names in government gazettes are Nepali words. This means the history of migration of Nepali population eastward towards India, to its northeastern places, to the southern part of India, to a large extent in Burma, these people are of Nepali origin. So my contention is that Nepali original diasporas can be sought in these spaces which very regrettably has not been explored. There is a fashion in Nepal, and this fashion, I claim, was created by Nepali people educated in the West, that anyone in the West writing from New York or from Melbourne or from any European space often claims to be diasporic. But that is not the case. This is one point I wanted to make in front of this August gathering. There is another thing I wanted to foreground in this August gathering in front of eminent literary people, that like in Bangladesh, where certain international figures have come and become the face value, the global face value of modern Bangladeshi writing in English. Like one example is Professor Hunt sitting here. There are many other, we also read from Nepal. There is a small population of Nepali people writing directly in English, working from New York or working from Germany. But then, very regrettably, in international collections, in international anthologies, in international researches, Nepal is either footnoted, it is subscripted, or it is very tactfully bypassed. As a very young generation Nepali poet and a lecturer and a critic, I feel this is regrettable. This, in my opinion, is a limitation of Western research in one place, or it may also be the fact that I, as a Nepali, have not been able to assert myself in the global arena, that look, I do exist and I am to be taken very seriously in the days to come. If you are not bored, I want to read a paragraph from one of my research papers. Modern world literature is overtly not about universals. It is about the local, the indigenous, the ethnic, the vernacular, and the different. Much of the Caribbean literature, the African literature, and Bengali literature is rooted in what is local about Bengal or Bengali civilization and culture. But this fact is very tactfully neglected in the Western researches. If we look at some of the anthologies published from the West, like in America or England, we are footnoted or neglected. And maybe this plight of Nepal that I am sharing with you is the same way Bangladesh's plight you share here in Sylhet. Barring a few individual writers accommodated for an individual piece of work, no major body of literature elsewhere mentions Nepal. Books like Master Works of Asian Literature, Master Works of Asian literature in comparative perspective, written by Barbara Stola Miller in 1994, does not mention Nepal. And I stand here to say there are Nepali writers globally acclaimed, and this was mysteriously not mentioned. This is not the only case. Dislocating Culture is a very powerful book written by an Indian researcher, Uma Narayanan, in 1997. Dislocating cultures, and this is all about diasporas and migrants, and Nepali literature has mysteriously been omitted in that book. There is another book I want to mention, Modern South Asian Literature, and I do have the right to ask whether Nepal is South Asia or not. In every political forum, in every sub-regional forum, in all academic forum, we are South Asia. But when it comes to a global anthology on South Asian literature, we are excluded. This is unfair. Modern East Asian Literature was published by Jesua S. Bisto in 2003. How Poets See the World was a book edited by Willard Spillman, and this was basically on Asia. And there is a book called Asian Poets by Rosemary M. Kinfield, and this is another book, Encyclopedia of Global Children's Literature. And all these global anthologies on regional literature, children's literature, women's writing by Uma Narayanan, and all these things have largely neglected Nepali literature and the existence of Nepali literature inside Nepal, in its neighborhood, and in the globe for that matter. And one reason is that when it comes to local, when it comes to ethnic and indigenous strength, the Western researchers tend to neglect us. When it comes to our poverty, I'm sure they have mentioned it. When it comes to our civilizational strength, there is a type of hesitation which can still be seen in the Western academia. And another reason could be, as I said earlier, that maybe I, as a Nepali, have failed to assert in the global arena that we are to be taken seriously. Thank you very much.